Good evening, crafting friends. I'm Dorene Decibus from It Begins with Ink and Paper, and welcome to Simply Stampin' Sunday. I am so excited for tonight because I have a really fun technique that I'm going to show you how we can create backgrounds and a background for your stamped images, your background for your card, and it just uses your ink pads. It can use your ink refills as well, but tonight I'm going to show you how to use it with just your ink pads. So we are in our third week of changing leaves. This is a fabulous stamp set that is found in the online exclusives section of the Stampin' Up website. So if you don't have it yet, I would highly suggest you get it. As I showed you in the very first week, this comes as a hybrid bundle. It has a hybrid embossing folder so that you can cut the images, 3 of the images out with the dies and emboss at the same time. It is so cool. I will be creating a video later on this month to show how the whole bundle works together. But for Simply Stamping Sunday, as you know, we just use stamps, ink and paper and try to get back to the basics and make beautiful cards without a lot of embellishments or other things. So this is what we're going to be using tonight for week 3. Now, the technique we're going to be using is called smooshing, and I'm going to show you how that works in just a minute. So what you need is something to smoosh on. I'm going to be using my glass mat, but you can use a paper plate that's been lined with something, so either a plastic plate or the Dixie plates that have like a lining on them so that they don't leak through. And so this is the first card we're going to make. Now, our cards are going to look a little different as I make them because I'm not going to be able to, every single time you smoosh, you're going to get a different background. But that gives you an idea of how all the colors blend together and give you this beautiful, beautiful background. In the second card that we're going to make, I'm going to change this up a bit. I felt the white was just a little too harsh, so I'm going to use Very Vanilla when we make it tonight. But in this case, I stamped right on the background but cut it out so then I could layer the different cards. And then finally, we're going to use another background and create this card. So those are the cards we're going to be making tonight with this technique. Now, all you need for this technique is cardstock. I'm going to use Basic White, and I cut it into 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 sheets. I found this was easier to use. When I was practicing this, I used 8 1/2 by 11 sheets, and I didn't get the kind of blending I was looking for because the sheets were just too big. Though these are great patterns and I am going to cut them up and use them, but it was just too much to try to use the 8 1/2 by 11 sheet. I was trying to have a little shortcut, but it didn't really work. So the best size is that 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. You're going to need something that you can spray water onto the ink. So that's your second thing that you need is a spritzer. And I have 2 here. I'm using the ones that the Stampin' Up sells, but you could use any spritzer. It doesn't matter. And you're going to need ink. We're going to be using 5 colors of ink tonight, and those colors are Old Olive, Crushed Curry, Cajun Craze, Cherry Cobbler, and Pretty Peacock. These colors I took all from the Regal family, so I know that they go together really well. And let me just, get those in order. When I put the ink down, I find that because I am actually going to break one little rule, when you're smushing, you don't want your inks to get too close together because it gets really muddy. But I also found that when they're close together, you get the best blending. So I am going to put my colors close together, but you can do one color at a time and smush and then put another color down. I'm going to put them down all the time because, as I said, I like how they blend, but I only get about 3 uses of my ink before it's all muddied. up. And then you're going to need some paper towels to clean, and I also have my chamois to clean my glass mat. So those are some things you're going to need. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is just add some ink to my glass mat. Now I'm going to try to add a lot of the yellow because that's my lightest color. This technique makes a mess, so I'm going to tell you that right up front. It makes a mess. So if you are someone who does not like a big mess when you're crafting, then this might not be the technique for you. But it is so much fun, and I really think you'll like it if you try it. So as you can see, I'm just smushing some ink right on my mat from the 4 colors of ink that I'm using. And we'll put the pretty peacock last. There we go. So I've got my 5 colors that I'm using. And now what I'm going to do is take my spritzer, and I'm just going to move my paper out of the way, and I'm just going to start spritzing the ink. It's going to move on its own, but I can also spray it and point my direction of the spray if I want it to go in a certain direction. So like if I want my red to move closer to my, you can see how I can tilt my spray and get it to move in that direction. Okay, there we go. We've got a nice mess here. So now what I'm going to do is just take my cardstock and start smooshing. I'm just going to press it into the ink. I'm going to get some on my fingers. It's just going to happen. And there's our first piece. Is that gorgeous or what? And then I'm going to take, again, press down, pick up. I've got a little white spot, so I'm going to put some green right there, just cover it up. You can have white spots, it's okay. And I'm going to set that aside. Oops, my heat tool, we're going to need that. Let me just move that out of the way. And I am about out of ink. So I'm just going to clean this up and start again. So I'm going to wipe all that ink off, and then I'm going to dry this area. I'm going to, you can see, this first one's my favorite, of course. I'm just going to set these aside as they're starting to dry, and we just repeat the process. So there's my Cajun Craze, my pretty peacock. I want to have at least 4, but maybe I'll get 5 out of this one. That would be nice. I mean, get 3 out of it to have 5. Now, I suggest anytime that you purchase an ink pad, you should always purchase the re-inker. It's just a smart move to have the re-ink when you need it. There we go. You can do this with re-inkers as well, and what you would do that would be different is just put the drops of the re-inkers down, spritz it, mix it up a little bit. Okay, there we go. So I am going to start right over here to begin with for this first piece. and then get some yellow on it. There we go. That's really pretty. Go right in the middle. Oh, that's really pretty too. Get some of the okay, there we go. We've got 4. These are water-based inks, so they just wipe up with water. You don't need anything else. But as I said, I do like to use the paper towel to dry afterwards. Now, so this is going to be a little loud with the heat gun. They do need to be dry before you use them. So I like to dry both the front and the back. They are going to curl up a little bit as they dry, and the ink is going to fade a little bit as well. I'm only going to dry that one just to show you the process. I'm going to actually put these to the side because, as I said, I created some the other day, and they're all dry so that we can use them to make our cards. Okay, so let's get started. So this is the first card we're going to make. It's just going to have a layer on the inside. So what I am using for materials, I have here a piece of 8.5 by 5.5 piece of pretty Peacock Cardstock. I have my piece of 4.25 by 5.5, and I'm going to cut a little bit off so it's going to fit on my card. So I am going to cut this to 4, and I'm going to cut this to 5.25. You can look and decide when you see your paper what size, where you want to cut it down. And then I have a piece of the same size as this now, a 5.25 by 4. And I am going to just put some adhesive, and this is going to go in the inside of my card. There we go. Now I'm going to be mounting this here, but I want to do my stamping first. So I am going to take a little piece here. I'm going to stamp that too. So we are going to use a little note, and we're going to use the giant leaf. All right. So now we'll get those ink pads out again. And I'm going to ink this stamp up. What's really nice, the little holes in the leaves will show the color of the paper behind it. So it just looks really cool. So I'm going to stamp that so it's about centered right on the piece of paper. There we go. Looks great. And then I am going to stamp the sentiment in the same color ink onto this piece of paper. It's a little crooked, so let's do it again. Oh, much better. So I'm going to take my paper snips, and I'm just going to cut that at an angle we'll get rid of this one. Add some adhesive to this. And this is going to go right over the stem. Then I am going to put more adhesive than I normally do, because once you've got paper really, really wet, it kind of curls up a little bit. And so I want to make sure that this stays flat on this piece of paper. And this piece of white measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. Whoops. There we go. So that's on. Isn't that pretty? I just love how everything blends together. And then this is going to go on the front of our card, and we are set with card number 1. So I used the same ink on both of these cards, and you can see those same colors, but you can see how they are just a tad, they're just different. Both beautiful, but you're going to get a different look each time. So there's our first card. Okay, let's get ready for card number 2. So in card number 2, I said we were going to go with some very vanilla this time. Last time when I made this card, I used with a basic white, but it just looks a little sharp for me. So I am going to use this. Okay, so on my piece of, so this is my background that I made. Isn't it cool? I love it. It's just so cool. I'm going to stamp using the 3 stamps, and I am going to this time stamp, let's see, we're going to stamp the leaf with the veins with cherry cobbler ink. And I'm going to do that right up into the corner of this page. And then I am going to use this stamp with the 3 leaves in our, oops, didn't get the whole thing stamped up, inked up, in the pretty peacock. And I'm going to fit this right in this space. So pretty. Close these, and then I'm going to get the old olive out, and I'm going to clean my other stamp, and I am going to ink that up with the old olive, but I want this one just cleaned a bit. So I don't contaminate my old olive ink pad. There we go. All right. So now, old olive. I start back teaching in 2 weeks, and I'm in the mood for fall, I guess. I don't want to be, but I am. So these 3 images can fit on a piece of 4 1/4. I've got a little bit over there, but that's okay, because when I cut it out, I'll just cut around it. But here are those images. And then what I did was I cut these out already by hand. They're pretty easy to cut. The images are bold, and let me just find my little paper snips here. So the images are pretty bold. So you're just going to go in. Now, of course, if you buy the bundle and you have a die cutting machine, like the Stampin' Boss machine that we have, then you can cut them out with the dies. But this is a pretty easy set to cut out with. So I've just kind of made my little cut to fix that, and I like leaving a little bit of a border, but if I have something like happened with this one where I stamped, I won't be leaving much of a border there. But it's kind of cool if you do leave a little bit of a border, because then you get to see all those cool colors that are in your background. And I love this one. So just to show you, it's very easy to cut. I'm not going to cut all three right now, but I will be using these in another card, so I'm not going to throw them away or anything. And as I said, this is a great, before you go to bed project to do. Get your smooshing done and then let them dry overnight, and then come back the next day and you're ready to stamp. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to use these three right here. The other thing I'm going to do is stamp on this "You Are Amazing." And I have that over here, and I'm going to use the Pretty Peacock ink. There we go, nice and centered, the way I like it. I'm going to trim these off. And then I am going to put this right on this piece here to give it a little bit of that Pretty Peacock. And then I'll trim this as well. Been doing this a lot. I really like this smaller little piece going behind the larger piece. Okay, now to put the card together. I've got two pieces. I've got two pieces of cardstock that measure of the Very Vanilla, that measure 4 by 5 1/4. My piece of Pretty Peacock measures 5 1/2 by 8 1/2. One of these pieces is going to go on the inside of the card. I'm just going to attach it with the Stampin' Seal. And the other one is going to go on to the front of the card, and I'm going to do that before I put anything on. It doesn't matter with this card if I use the Basic White or Very Vanilla, even though I made the leaves on the Basic White, because it's all colored in with ink, so you can't really tell which one. So what I like to do is layer, oh, I'm already loving this more, this on, so the different leaves are going to show. And I'm going to put this one down like this, so we get this nice little pile of leaves, which I think is so pretty. So I'm just going to add a little adhesive to the leaves of this little vine. And this is going to be in the center of the card. So there we go. I'm going to add, again, some adhesive to the leaves. I'm not worried about the boughs because I'm going to put the greeting over that and it will cover those up. There we go. This I'm going to use some dimensionals, and I'm getting to the bottom of my batch of dimensionals, so I am just going to, I think I've got enough on this sheet. I go through a lot of dimensionals, it is for sure. There we go. So we have our little fallen leaf group. And I'm going to take my greeting now and I'm going to add a strip of dimensionals. I used every piece that's on the package. And pull that off. And we're going to put this, I'm going to put it right under that leaf a little bit. And then just put it down. There we go. So do you like the white background better or the very vanilla background? I think I like the very vanilla. It's a little softer. It's not as stark. But that is card number 2. All right, let's move on to card number 3. So card number 3 just has a background. I want to look at the background that I dried. It is just about dried, and I think I'd like to try this background on the card. This one was one of my 4th ones. It's still pretty. I mean, I could go with either one, but I like that this one has some of the yellow in it. So I think I'm going to go with this one that is pretty dry right now. So on this one, we're going to do a couple of things. So what do we need for supplies? We need a piece of cherry cobbler that measures 5.5 by 8.5. We need a piece of cherry cobbler that measures 1 1/4 by 5.5. And then we need a piece, this piece is to stamp the 3 leaves, but to save time, I've already stamped them and I have them right here, so I'm going to hold off stamping and cutting those out just in the name of time. So I'm going to need a piece that is going to be layered. This will be layered on top of it, and then this will go on the inside of the card. So let me trim this, and then I'm going to show you a little trick with that I have done before with my scoring tool. So I am going to take off 1/4 inch. So this is going to measure 4 inches. And then I'm going to cut this at 5 1/4. There we go. Oh, it's so pretty. Really like it. So I'm going to again use extra adhesive to put this on my piece of white cardstock, just because, like I said before, when it gets wet, it seems to bend and buckle a little bit. So it's just nicer to, oops, wrong one. It's just nicer to have that extra adhesive. And I want to make sure this is on even. There we go. So we will there we go. Perfect. Extra adhesive off. All right, so then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paper trimmer out, make sure that my blade is up here. It's the one that matches the gray on here, and I'm going to use the lighter gray as it's my scoring tool. And I'm going to score this at every 1/4 inch. So I'm going to start with, so this is, oh, it's 1 1/2, I'm sorry, 1 1/2. So I'm going to go down to 1 1/4, and I'm going to score this. Then I'm going to go to 1 and do the same thing. This is just going to add a little bit of texture. I'm going to go to 1 3/4. My desk is just so piled with supplies for this tonight. And we'll go to 1 and then to 1 1/4. So this is going to give it a little texture. That's going to look, let me get this right. There you go. So you can see those lines going across. And I'm going to put this in the middle of this card. So I'm just going to add some adhesive. And we'll put this right towards the middle. And now we can add our inside piece. I do want to do a little stamping on that to match the front of our card. So in Cherry Cobbler, we're just going to stamp the leaf on the inside. And it doesn't look like I got any down on the mat. So this will go on the inside of our card. And I put that in wrong. It'll still look great like that. Because this is not a, this is going to be not vertical, but horizontal. And this will go on the front. There we go, already looking great. So now all we have to do is add the leaves and our grading. So one leaf is going to go on the left side. The other leaf is going to go on the right side. And the third leaf is going to have dimensionals, and it is going to go in the middle. So like I said, I use every single bit of this. I'm even going to use that little piece I cut off for over here. And we'll put one more right in the middle. Okay, this won't go anywhere. So I'd love to hear in the comments which card was your favorite. And this one I'm going to have it at like it's falling in a different direction. Just like that. For our greeting, I am going to use Thinking of You. I'm going to use Memento Black ink. And I'm going to stamp it right on the front. This is from the Everyday Greetings. I wanted something different than what was in the stamp set. And that is going to go right there. There we go. And that is our third card. So let's look at what we created tonight with the smooshing technique. Clear off a space to put everything out. This was our third card. Our second card was this one. And our first card was this. So there you go. That is the smooshing technique. I hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Simply Stamping Sunday. I had a lot of fun with this technique, and I hope you liked it as much as I do. I will be back on Friday night for another edition of Fun Fold Friday, and of course back next Sunday night for our 4th week of changing leaves, and I've got a fun group of cards already prepared for that, so I can't wait to show you what we're doing next week. I hope you have a great week. Stay healthy, have fun, and I'll see you Friday night at 7 o'clock. Good night, everybody.